So hello and good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Fairclough. I'm the Customer Success Manager here at Elm Tech with the distributor for SketchUp in the UK. I'm an Enscape and Chaos partner also. I think we've got a chunk of people who've joined us now, so I think we'll get going with things. Just as a brief overview of what we'll be doing, today we're going to be having a look at Enscape 3.4 and a little introduction to Enscape for Mac as well. We're really fortunate to be joined today by Kai from Enscape, who is on the line with us also. So Kai's going to be presenting the bulk of the presentation. There we are. He might be able to see your screen just there. Yeah, we're going to go through the presentation, do our introductions, and throughout the webinar today, feel free to ask questions in the side panel on the right hand side. You should have an option to ask questions. Me and my colleagues there will be answering some of those as we go through webinar, and then at the end, any other questions that we need Kai's expertise on, we'll ask him those ones as well. So Kai will be able to field any questions about Enscape, anything about SketchUp, or anything kind of non-Enscape. We'll help out with those ones. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Kai there and let him say hello properly and introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Adam. I think you still want to make me a presenter so I can share my, oh, there it is.
There we go. That should do it.
Show my screen. I hope it's going to be the right one. Let's check this one. All right. Let me see if I can make sure. Yeah, you see my screen, you see Enscape. Hello, everyone. My name is Kai. I'm an application engineer here at Enscape. And let's see. We're going to jump later on to my Mac, so I'm preparing that already. Yeah, and thank you very much for attending. Today we're going to have a look at the new additions to the Enscape feature set that came out with Enscape 3.4, as well as our major new release, of course, Enscape for Mac, available on SketchUp, both available since the 27th of July, I believe, so pretty new. And let's start with 1 second. There we go. Okay, let's start with Enscape 3.4, available on Windows, and the new additions that we have here. So there are two major feature improvements that we've added here. One of them is the custom asset categories. So as you all know, we have a extensive asset library that our 3D artists are constantly busy extending further and further. Currently, it holds, how many? Can I see it in this environment? It's a total of 3,294 that we can access both in your design application as well as in Enscape directly. But if you feel like these are not enough, or you're looking for a specific model that's not provided in this library, you can of course bring in your own custom assets in form of a FBX, OBJ, or GLTF model. So this has been available for a while, but and as you know, we're working with Enscape. As always, we are very we appreciate any contribution we get from our community. And one thing that became clear after a while of our community using those custom assets, that you need a certain, or the ability to categorize or to subdivide your custom assets, because if you're using hundreds or even thousands of these models, it gets hard to find the right ones. So some users were working with subfolders in their custom asset libraries and so on and so forth. But we thought that's a great way, or there's a great opportunity for us to make your life a lot easier. So we have added custom categories for your custom 3D assets, and you can find those in an entirely new interface that we have added to this custom asset system library. I call it the list view, and you can access it by pressing this button down here. And yeah, again, this will open an entirely new interface, currently opening on my second screen here, where you again see all of your existing custom assets. And as you see on the left side, our categories, or your categories in that case, that you can manage here. There's a German one because I've presented this in a German webinar before. I'm just gonna delete that. And yeah, to manage those custom categories, it's really simple. As you can imagine, we have an Add Category button in the top left here, where we can just click it, enter a name. This is a category to show how this works, whatever. And you can click this little button on the side to choose a custom icon. These are the ones that are currently available. So let's just go with an apple, for example, because we're going to show you an Apple version of Enscape later on. So as soon as that's the case, you have an empty category right here, and how to assign your custom 3D assets to it. It's simple. You can take one, hold the left mouse button, and drag and drop it onto the category, and you will from now on find that custom assets in this new custom category. If you have multiple assets that you want to assign to a category, you can click this checkbox up here to select all of them or select multiple ones, and then drag and drop all of them. As you see, move 4 assets into a category of your choice. You can, or this is its own interface that has the ability to save your changes and export them. And let me just check. Don't use audio. All right. Yeah, if you are creating, if you're importing new kinds of assets, we can check that, or we can simulate that by clicking this button here to edit an existing asset. Let's save it. In this custom asset editor that you're using to set up new assets, you also have the ability to assign an asset to a custom category like this right away. Let's see, as soon as it's opened. There we go. Still loading. This may happen. It gives me the chance to, first of all, have another look at my Mac system here. Just looking good. This is going to be the first time that I'm using GoToWebinar on a Mac. And have a look into the questions. And of course, you should see a questions field. If you have any questions, we're going to have a Q&A later on. As Adam already wrote, you can write it in the questions panel. So we'll be happy to respond to your questions later on. And here's my custom asset editor, where we're editing individual custom assets. And as you see, we have this new category selection in here as well. And we can assign a category to a asset while we're setting it up, while we're creating it, or even create a new category when creating a new custom asset. So wherever you want to access this system, you can do it here. I'm going to discard my changes for now. So this should give you a good overview on how that works. And of course, as soon as we change the system, we can access these categories right away in our custom asset interface here. Now, if you're wondering if these custom categories are being shared when you're sharing your custom asset library, which is an option, I hope you're aware of that. Yes, of course, they are also being shared. So we can have like one administrator, so to say, who is creating the custom assets, and they can distribute the custom asset library to the users, so to say, who can then access those assets in these through these individual custom categories. Okay, so that's the first part of the additions that we've added to the Enscape feature set with Enscape 3.4. The second part that I want to show you today is the ability to update views. And once again, this is a little bit twofold. You can access your view system, the views that you have in your design application through this button here, the view management button, or by pressing the F key. This will access your scenes in SketchUp. It will access your named views in Rhino, your 3D views in Revit, and so on and so forth. And there has been a little bit of back and forth communication between those two systems. So between Enscape, between the views in Enscape and the views in your design application. Namely, if you wanted to create a new view, and let's maybe pick a nice representation or a nice perspective here. If you wanted to create a new view, you could do that through Enscape right away by clicking the Create View button down here. And you already see, if you're familiar with Enscape before 3.4, you already see some new changes in the interface here. We'll get to that in a second. So there has been a little bit of a back and forth communication for you to create views into your project, into your design application. But if you wanted to change something about that, you would have to perform those changes in your design application, which works. But of course, if you are using Enscape in full screen, like I do now, you maybe don't want to switch back and forth all the time. So we have added the ability to edit more or all of the features of your view through Enscape. So let's maybe bring up SketchUp right here, so we can see those changes happen right away. We have the Enscape scene 1, and for example, we can decide to change the name, Enscape test scene, click save, and here too it's gonna communicate it. So again, one big factor, one thing that is really important for us at Enscape is to have one project on both sides, in Enscape and in your design application, and that is just doubling down on that. So if you're changing the name of your 3D view in Enscape, it's also going to change in your design application. The same thing is true for anything else. If we move around, if we change the daytime, you see it already changing in my sun position interface down there, which we'll cover in a second. And you see those values, the position, the rotation or orientation, all of that change in real time. Now we have the option to undo those changes before we click the save button. So we can still return to what was initially saved in this scene. Or, of course, and that is the whole new function here, we can decide to override to save what we've changed and override our existing view. So let's see if that's the case. Enscape test scene, and now as you see, it has been updated in SketchUp as well. So once again, we're having the same data on both sides, but it gives us more access, or gives you more access and the ability to choose where you want to perform those changes, whether that's in your design application, in this case SketchUp, or in Enscape directly, which, well, is another level of comfort when working with Enscape. And another addition that is also going in that direction is the Enscape sun position. So, you know, in many of the design applications that we support, you can save your sun position, also depending on where we are on the planet, so the geographical location. But it is a system that is a little different per design application. So to simplify things and to, again, have one ground source of truth, so to say, and for you to be more easily be able to get the sun direction that you want for that particular shot, for that particular view, you can now choose to save the Enscape sun position and to edit the sun position in this view editing interface using this handy two options here. So we have one option for the horizontal position of the sun in Enscape and of course in your design application as well. Let me actually put Enscape back into full screen. And we have one slider, one control to control the vertical position of the sun. And you see you can also copy or enter numbers here, so you have reproducible results. And if you find a position for your sun that you think works good, you can click save. And once again, it's being saved in that 3D view directly in Enscape. Of course, it's also being saved in the project file. So when you close it, reopen Enscape, the file, or share it onto a different machine, it's gonna be consistent every single time. And once again, of course, you can decide to use the sun position from your design application or the one that is stored in Enscape. Exactly. So those are the major additions that we have added with Enscape 3.4 on the user side, on the user interface side. One interesting new addition also that is that I want to show is reflections. That is a common topic that is being brought up by our users. Oftentimes, you see it in here in those reflections already. We have parts of our trees popping in and out a little bit, and that is still the case. We're not able to remove that entirely, but we're able to improve that behavior. So we have improved the algorithm that is running in the background that is deciding how much geometry, what geometry we can show in your reflections. And we have added a couple of very smart parameters. Essentially, that mean that Enscape is deciding, depending on the scale, on the complexity of a model, on the position of a model, whether it should be shown in a reflection or not. And we can we can focus what is being displayed in reflections more precisely and more efficiently. So we have been able to improve that behavior quite a bit. Apart from that, we have also added new assets and materials in our asset library and in the Enscape material library, which you can find in the design application by following or by clicking on this button. And the topic for the new assets and the new materials this time was interior design assets and materials. So you can find these when you're opening Enscape after an update, when you're opening it for the first time after an update under new. In my case, this new category is already empty because I've already opened it a couple of times. But once again, you can find new interior design materials and 3D assets to use in your designs. So that has been the 3.4 update available for Windows. Now let me switch over my mouse and keyboard to access my Mac over here. And let me see if I can share my screen over there as well. Or if I have to give over the presenter state. No, I think that's fine. So let's see. Just give me a second. Once again, the info, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat.
So we do have one question here, which I'll grab whilst you're sorting that out. So
that's fine.
We've got James asking, for custom assets, what's the best material preparation for the best results in Enscape? Applying a solid color before uploading or applying textures? Well, I think the answer there is going to be that you want to go through the same process that you would go through with any model in Enscape. Your base color and your bump maps, and you're going to want all of your texture maps to get the best results on your custom asset. And I guess it depends on how you bring that file into the asset library as to whether those will be there or not. So I'm sure Kai can correct me if I'm wrong there, but you can actually build your so if you're using SketchUp, for example, you can build a custom asset inside of SketchUp, apply all of your textures and maps within Enscape, and you can save that into your library. Or if you've gone away and grabbed an asset from somewhere like TurboSquid or Sketchfab or something like that, those may well be an FBX file or a GLTF file, and those will have the textures come with them, and those will just come in automatically. So there are a couple of different routes to do that.
Exactly. So as you say, there's a couple of different ways to do that. It sounds to me like the questioner is asking how to prepare it when you're creating them yourself, and he's putting up a very good point there. So certain formats like OBJ and FBX, they will automatically translate the textures that you've linked in your 3D application or wherever you're creating your 3D models, SketchUp or wherever. However, I find myself, whenever I import custom models into the custom asset system, I find myself going over all the materials in that custom asset editor again anyways. So I don't mind quickly relinking or linking the textures for the first time. So indeed, usually, and it depends how you're working, I usually create those models, those custom assets quick and dirty, so to say. And I will actually, as it was already proposed, I will actually just assign some base colors just to easily recognize which material is which, and then do the material work entirely in the custom asset editor when importing into Enscape. So I think for me, that's the most comfortable, the quickest way to do that. But again, it depends heavily on how you work. So let me try, if there's no other questions right now, of course, let me try, oh yeah, I'm gonna make the other Kai the presenter, and I will, the Mac system is, the Mac GoToWebinar is giving me some interesting message here. Let me just read that. I need to grant access to the application to record the screen. The Mac system, it's a little bit new to me, I apologize. Let's see, go to meeting. Let's click this to unlock. There we go. Let's grant. Okay, I need to restart GoToWebinar on my second machine. So let me just quickly do that for it to have the rights to share my screen. Been using GoToWebinar on Windows for years, but this is the first time on Mac. So just give me a second. Don't use audio. And
let's just have a look. Are there any other questions that we've got currently? Okay. So can you use models imported from 3D Warehouse or Podium? So definitely 3D Warehouse. I've done that. That's really simple. You can literally be inside of SketchUp, open up the Enscape custom asset editor, make it look the way you want it to, and save that into your library. So that's super easy. I'm not sure what format Podium uses, or if they're exportable from there. So that I can't answer. I can try and find out for you, Carla.
Adam, I'm not sure if you're the presenter now or you're the organizer. Can you make the Kai that is currently not sharing his webcam
yes,
presenter?
let's try that one. I've made one of the Kais a presenter.
That looks good.
Is that the right one?
Yes.
Lots of windows. There we go. I can see some Mac looking stuff now. So that's great.
Exactly. There we are. So yeah, you're seeing it already. We have Enscape on a Mac right here, and we're running it through SketchUp here. Exactly. And Enscape for SketchUp is now available on Mac since the 27th of July just as well. And you can download and use it right away. And essentially, it's exactly what you expected. It's Enscape for Mac. It works right away. There are not all of the features included yet that are available on Windows. So we're working on that. Let's have a look at or a tour through what is available now. Enscape, once again, it's very much the same on Mac as for Windows. It is a plugin for SketchUp, and you have a toolbar right here on the left side, which is identical to what you're used to if you're familiar with Enscape on Windows. With one exception, there is one new button, which is this one, which is just related to the fact that you can have multiple projects, multiple files open in Enscape for in SketchUp for Mac at the same time, and you can switch between those documents or change the active document, so you don't have to open Enscape multiple times. You can essentially just cycle through these open documents using this button. Apart from that, if you're new to Enscape, this is the start button, which if you have any kind of model loaded in SketchUp, Enscape will open in a separate window and display this very model as you see it here on the right side. We have a view synchronization, which is very, very useful if you're new, because you can, if you're not familiar with movement in 3D space, but you're familiar with SketchUp, which as you see, I am partially, you can simply synchronize the Enscape camera from the SketchUp camera. So you can continue moving in SketchUp just like you move, like you used to. You can navigate the same way in Enscape. Will just follow, displaying you the realistic view as you see it on the right. Let's move back so we can see our model. There we go. So that's that button. We have an Enscape Objects button, which currently holds light objects for Mac. Again, not all of these are available at this point. We have a spot and a rectangular light. If you want to place any of these lights, you can just click a couple of times in SketchUp, twice to select or to place the light source, and 2 more times to select or to place a light target. And if you don't see the light show up during day, that's simply because sunlight is way brighter than these lights by default, but we can just dial it up to be bright enough, and you'll see that it will show up during day just as well. You can change the beam angle here. You can add an IES profile, which, if you're not familiar with that file type, it's a file that you can download. There is a great website for that. It's called IES Library, which makes your light look more interesting, which kind of simulates the light bulb effect on the light shape, so it's not distributed in all directions equally. If you want to color a light, you can simply hop over to the materials window, pick a color that you like, and just color the light source. And as you see, that's how it's going to show up, or that's the color it's going to use in the Enscape visualization as well. All right, let's see. Let me just move this to this. Ah, yeah, okay. I have a little bit of my window cut off. That explains things. We have an asset library, as you see it here, or we have the same asset library as we have it in Enscape for Windows. Again, of course, that you can place in your scene directly in SketchUp, not in Enscape yet. Enscape for Mac is a little bit behind on that, but we're working to provide the same feature set here. We have the Enscape Material Editor, which especially for SketchUp is tremendously useful because the SketchUp Material Editor is very slim, very simple, and even simpler on Mac. And the Enscape Material Editor just adds the necessary capabilities to the material system, so you can have the best quality or the adequate quality in Enscape, like bump maps, reflectivity, metallic option, and things like that. By the way, we have tons of tutorials and learning content on our website that you can visit that applies both for Windows as well as for Mac. So for example, this material editor is identical on Mac and on Windows. We have our upload management interface where you can, for example, manage your web standalones and panoramas, which we'll have a look at in a second how to create, and our settings where you can change the language and other general settings for Enscape. Let's have a look at the Enscape interface. As you see, there are a couple of things still grayed out. I've mentioned that before. We're working on providing those features for our Mac users as well. We have the view management that I've mentioned, where you can access your scenes in the scenes that are present in SketchUp. But again, like the 3.4 editions, where you can add your or change the sun position through the view management, are not included yet. Video editor is currently grayed out, so that is gonna come in a future update. But things like, of course, the screenshot button with which you can create an image directly from Enscape are available, and it's the usual speed that you're probably familiar with from Enscape for Windows. So you can render a full HD image in few seconds. You can create a panorama, mono, or stereo by clicking this button here, or you can create a web standalone to upload in the browser. Let's check how long it's going to take to create a panorama from here. Can we do it right away? No, actually, I think it's best if I use the one that I've already created. So once you've created your panorama, click this button. It's going to run through in 1, 2, 3 minutes, something like that. And then you can find it in the uploads management, where we have currently a panorama already uploaded. But if that's not yet the case, this is what it looks like. You can choose to upload it to the Enscape cloud. And once it's uploaded, you will also receive a QR code or a link that you can scan with your mobile phone right away to review it on any kind of phone. So the usual Enscape functionality and the usual workflow here, where you can get your designs to your customer any way you like, really fast and simple. So that's that. If we want to present a QR code, for example, well, I can copy it here. I don't think I can save it in, or I can share it in GoToWebinar just like that. So, but I can copy the link address and share that in the chat. Seems like I cannot send it to everyone in my version of GoToWebinar.
If you want to send it to me, I'll send it to everyone.
Wonderful. That's what I'm gonna do. So Control V.
So this is one of the best kind of things about Enscape in my eyes. So the presentation options, being able to just generate that panorama, or even a 3D standalone application that you can send it a link to a client and they can see what you've prepared for them is super useful. Super useful.
Exactly, right? Exactly. We've seen so many nice applications of that, or the QR code where it's just printed into a corner of a existing beautiful rendering, and you can just get the full picture by scanning it with your phone right away.
There we go. Exactly. I shared it to the chat, so if you want to have a look at that link after, or in the corner, you can just see the panorama that's just been rendered there.
Wonderful. Okay, and on the right we have we have an identical experience as Enscape with Windows. So we have a mini map that we can open that will show you a top-down view, not a bird's eye view, a top-down view of your model. Also height dependent. So if we move upwards, you see that it will show you the level of your model that you're currently that you're currently moving through. We have a save frame, which allows you, if you have a whatever a resolution you have set in the visual settings, but most useful if you have a custom resolution set up in the visual settings, like for example square, aspect ratio, like this. It will show you what that's going to look like when you render the image, so you can get the right shot, the right angle, the right perspective. Exactly. Let's see. We have the option here to switch between walk mode and fly mode, so you can do that using the space bar, and that's going to toggle between the fly mode and walk mode. You can see it up here, and whether you're constrained to the floor and whether you're colliding with walls or not. And well, the VR button, that one is also still grayed out. It's not available for Mac yet, but we're also planning to provide that feature, that ability in the future as well. Visual settings, which are their own topic overall. Let me see, just to highlight, like you can switch through, again, identical to what we have on Mac. You can switch to different rendering styles, like our white mode, change the cloud appearance, change the resolution of your renderings, and so on and so forth. So there's a ton to experience, to try in here. Let's see, there is a skybox connected right now. If we disable it, we can see we can change the cloud density dynamically. Once again, we can change the exposure. We can add some depth of fields to get that DSLR camera look to it, and much more. Maybe the most important trick here, or learning here, if you're new to Enscape, just hover over any setting and Enscape will tell you what it does. Okay, so that's a really quick overview over Enscape for Mac. Once again, if you're familiar with it from Windows, it's almost exactly the same, just a few features are still on their way. If you're new to it, you have a world to explore there. It's simple and effective, but very useful, and just fun to work with. So yeah, I hope that's been interesting, and I hope you've learned something. And once again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, whether it's about Mac or Enscape in general. Just type it in the questions field, and we'll be happy to answer.
Excellent. Thank you, Kai. So I've answered a few of the questions there, but as you've got some models open, there might be some ones that you can help with here. So Chloe was just asking, you're saying she's new to Enscape and what's live rendering like? Well, we've got to see some live rendering happening right there. So Enscape, of course, is a real-time renderer. So we see pretty much the end results immediately. When we hit
Exactly.
the screenshot button or the render button, it'll take a few seconds and it'll make a nicer, sharper, higher resolution version of what we're looking at. What we can see, what else have we got there? Sorry, I'm not even talking right. So Lawrence has asked, actually, can you show a section from SketchUp in Enscape? And of course we can. So maybe you could just drop one of those in and slice up our model and
Absolutely.
just show how that looks.
I think I haven't done that on Mac yet, but it's going to be a nice premiere. I hope it's the same as on
World
Windows. So let's
premiere for Kai.
lots of premieres nowadays. So how was that? That was under, I think, draw. No. View,
You'll just need to find
edit,
the
somewhere in
section
here.
tab. Yeah, it's a different place on the Mac, isn't it?
Is it?
Tool.
That's
Yeah,
that's
maybe try tools if you're not
section pane. There it is. So
there. We go.
let's just place one. Okay, and you see it already on the right side, even with our visual settings hiding it right now. So it's gonna cut it off just as we've done it in SketchUp. There we go. And of course, if we move this upwards, it's gonna update in real time as well. So we can, and that's like a general rule for Enscape. We could now disable it, and that's gonna update right away. I think that's hide. And yeah, whatever you do. Oh, okay. No, it's not hiding the effect. It's just hiding
You have to
the
turn
pane.
it off in the scene. But that's yeah. So it's much like most of Enscape and SketchUp working together, synchronized between scenes, so you can set up different scenes that show different sections. But it's pretty much what you're seeing in SketchUp is happening in Enscape in the
Exactly.
pretty Enscape
I
graphic.
I didn't update the scene. That's why the section cut disappeared. But of
Yes.
course, if you update the scene, that's going to be saved. And if you didn't watch it earlier, what I did, why it's being shown white on the right side is because I've switched to this white mode. Of course, we can change that back anytime. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention that yet, but like you can connect those visual settings to your individual scenes or views in Enscape as well. So like the amount of creative freedom that you have there is tremendous.
Yeah, it's really great. Just like we can with SketchUp, yeah, different styles, different looks for different scenes if you want to
Exactly.
communicate different things. So what that? Oh, my brain is not letting my mouth talk. Which Mac are you using, Kai?
The webinar experience. I'm using a M1 Max, M1 Pro, M1 Max. I think it's an M1 Max.
Yeah, so that'll be one of the Mac Pros.
There we are. So I got the best model out of my team. I'm very lucky about that, but we can of course have a look at our system requirements as well, which we can find on our website. There we go. Let's go to enscape3d.com and resources, knowledge base, and here you can select what system you're on, and you see this is brand new SketchUp and Mac. And we can check our system requirements here under. By the way, what you're not seeing is I have an additional GoToWebinar interface on this one Mac monitor that is not being
Blocking
transmitted.
up
So that's
half of your screen,
exactly
making it hard to do things.
all the time. But here we are, where are the system requirements? There they are. So let's have a look at those. And as you see, you have to have a M1 chip. As far as I've heard, M2s work just as well. And one of these systems, like a MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, iMac is the minimum requirements, and a MacBook Pro or Mac Studio is the recommended requirements with an M1 Pro or Max or general M1 chip.
And if you're not, I guess, not familiar with system requirements on for software, minimum is the minimum you need to make that software essentially work. And recommended is going to give you a kind of better experience. Of course, there are more even beyond that. If you pick a more expensive machine, a more powerful machine, of course, those are going to
It
work
depends a little bit
even better.
on the, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. Depends a
I was
little bit
going
on
to
the
say, yeah,
scale and complexity of the models that you're working with. Like if
yes,
you're
definitely.
planning to visualize a whole, amusement park in one go, you should probably go definitely for the recommended system requirements rather than the minimum system requirements.
Definitely. Brilliant. Okay, so there's a question there. I think these are sort of general use, general purpose Enscape questions, but we haven't covered it. But how do you apply a material in SketchUp like we might do in another rendering tool?
And that's such an interesting
Very
question,
simple, isn't
because
it?
it's one of those questions, like just the same like with coloring lights, that are sometimes too simple, or that they are so simple that people don't expect it to be there. How do you apply a material? You do that in SketchUp. The same thing with, if you're using Enscape for Windows, same thing with Revit, with Rhino, with Archicad and Vectorworks. You are applying, you're managing your materials in your existing workflows, in your existing design application. And Enscape just sits on top of that, or attaches on top of that, and adds additional information. So you're creating your materials in SketchUp, or whatever design application you're using. You apply them to surfaces in your design application, and then you can open them in the Enscape material editor and add additional information like bump maps and emissive materials, something like that. But you can also, if you want to, just continue using your design application material system, and Enscape will just work fine with it. The Enscape material editor just gives you a little more, some more options and some more creative freedom there, but you don't have to use it.
Yeah, there we go. So that's your question, Audrey. So we manage it in Enscape, and then you can go and do the extra stuff that you may have seen in other rendering packages to add that additional detail. But again, it's one of the great things about Enscape is you can kind of work in SketchUp as you normally do, and then Enscape's there, and then we can start to add stuff on top of that. A related question that's just popped up there: does Enscape have its own material library? It does. That was added in last year, or just at the end of the year before. So there is a big selection of those more detailed materials that you can access. And again, really nice and easy to use in SketchUp. We
Exactly.
browse that
Let me just
material
explain it,
library.
because
Yeah,
to
go for
show
it.
it,
Sorry, I'm talking.
no, it's perfectly fine. I like to listen to that. No, it is only available on Windows so far, so not on Mac yet, so I cannot show it there, but it's really simple. There is a button for that in the Enscape interface. If you want us to show it, let me know, and I'll be happy to switch over. But essentially, we have a selection of, I think it's roughly around 400 materials right now that you can pick from. And the genius thing about that is, as I mentioned, like, you're essentially managing your materials in your design application. So what Enscape does, we have one library for each design application that you can pick from, which are just materials that are perfectly set up by our 3D artists and just work. And when you select one and import it into your scene, it will create a native material in your design application, in SketchUp, for example, which holds additional information if necessary, like bump maps once again. So you're not missing out on anything, but you can edit it afterwards. You can edit it in your design application or in the Enscape material editor. Both is fine. And you can even override existing materials with materials from that material library. So if you have existing ones that you've already applied throughout the scene and you don't want, to apply it again, you can just replace the existing material. And like, if you're using a solution like Revit, for example, that holds additional information like fire resistance and things like that, Enscape is only going to replace the visual aspects. So once again, we're on the safe side here, and you're being anything is being covered without being disruptive.
Excellent. So I think that is all of the questions that we have had, and they're all answered. So we've got a couple of moments there if anyone's got any last ones, but other than that, I think that's probably us done for today. So thank you ever so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. For anybody else that has any further questions, feel free to drop me an email if you've registered. you should have my email. I'll pop my email in the chat as well. If this is about purchasing or trialing or just how to use SketchUp and Enscape, of course, drop me an email. I can answer some of those questions for you outside of here. But again, yes, thank you, Kai. Thanks for coming. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll maybe see you again in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have lots of success with Enscape and have a nice day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.